Hey folks, Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU here for another direct to YouTube special. This one brought to you by Shoop, or It's Shoop, depending on where you're following them. So we're playing with a green-red mid-range stompy Eldrazi deck. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to call this one, but I get a couple of games to figure out what I want to call it. So this is a deck that in many ways is built around Blood Sun. So this isn't a red prison deck necessarily. Now, why Blood Sun? So number one, it shuts off a bunch of utility lands, and fetch lands fall into that category. Number two, it does something really unique that this deck wants, and that's that it shuts off the ability of City of Traders to be sacrificed. Ancient Tomb is not a great land. You have an Ancient Tomb in your opener, and that deals 8 points of damage to you over the points of a game. That's a very real cost, right? But if you have a City of Traders that sticks around, that's a very persistent source of mana that is going to be very useful to you. So Blood Sun not only hurts your opponent's mana base, but it also helps you to stabilize yours. So we are a green-red mid-range deck, really. We have a couple of different mid-rangey elements in that we have things like Punishing Fire, plus Grove of the Burn Willows to pick off smaller creatures. And then we're hoping to play a couple of different sorts of games. We can play the hyper-aggressive game by leading on, like, say, a Chalice of the Void into a Goblin Rabblemaster, or we can play a much longer game, grinding things out with cards like Clothis or Chandra or Big Angry Chandra. Or we can just play a mid-range game where we're hoping that our 4-drop creatures like Thought-Knot Seer and Shifting Ceratops are a little bit bigger than some of the things that our opponent has going on. I changed 2 cards that were in the main deck of this. There was a Xenagos the Reveler and a 3rd Shifting Ceratops when this list was originally submitted. Green might be hard. We have some things to really help out with that problem specifically, like Firelit Thicket, but I thought it would be a good idea to split Shifting Ceratops with Reality Smasher. Reality Smasher costs 1 more, kind of, but is a little bit easier on the mana. And then I cut the Xenagos for a Court of Ire. This is a card that I've seen DJ Isma, or Digisma, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to pronounce that, a Japanese player playing with in a couple of their lists of a similar nature, and I thought it was really neat. If you're the Monarch, it deals just 7 damage to any target every turn, which means that that card alone is a 3-turn clock, which is pretty neat. And I figured introducing the Monarch subgame is probably okay here. I have Punishing Fire to defend it. I have a bunch of expendable tokens to go and get it back. And even if your opponent takes the Monarch, this is still a sort of like Sulfuric Vortex sort of thing every turn. I did make 1 change to the sideboard, and I don't know if my decision is correct. So this list was submitted with 4 Leyline of the Voids, which is the stock graveyard hate when you are playing Chalice of the Void in your deck list. It doesn't run into Chalice, and one of the problems that a lot of Chalice decks run into is that your hate doesn't come online before your opponent can put something scary into the graveyard. You know, if you're on the draw and your opponent has the Entomb turn 1, your Chalice doesn't look great. However, I think right now, in the metagame, the thing that I'm worried about from the graveyard is Uro. And Punishing Fire is not going to efficiently answer an Uro. That would take a whole lot of Grove of the Burn Willows and a bajillion D mana. And I don't really want to be boarding Leyline versus an Uro deck, so I'm going to try out Relic of Progenitus in that slot. And against a lot of the sort of Uro decks, I'm going to plan on boarding out Chalice and boarding in, like, Relics and Carpet of Flowers. We have a lot of things that we can spend mana on in this deck between, like, the Punishing Fire loops and, like, some of these big Planeswalkers, and I think Carpet of Flowers is going to be awesome here. But Phil, you always say Carpet of Flowers is going to be awesome. Well, Sally, you're right, because it is. Otherwise, we just have a little bit of ability to pivot or adjust our deck in the post-sideboard games. We can answer artifacts or enchantments, we can get a little bit more value, or we can kill our opponent more quickly. Anyway, before we get started here, I really would appreciate it if you throw me a like on this video if you've been watching my legacy content. That's one of the biggest predictors of whether or not a video is going to do well. And if you want to try this one out on your own later or muck with it a bit, remember the video details are always going to have the deck lists and donation information. Let's battle. Okay, it looks like we're going to be on an aggressive opening hand for game 1 here. We'll have a turn 2 Goblin Rabblemaster, and then a turn 3 Shifting Ceratops or Thought-Knot Seer. Probably Thought-Knot Seer, because then we can go hasty Shifting Ceratops on the next turn. Oh, Chalice me, baby. Oh, yeah. Let's play Ancient Tomb here. That leaves me the possibility of playing City of Traders on turn 2 and playing Thought-Knot Seer. I don't think I'm going to do that, but I want to have that option. The reason I don't want to do that is then I can't play Shifting Ceratops soon after. Alright, so my Goblin Rabblemaster has now become worse in the face of that. Does that make me change my mind? JK. I want to do this. I don't want to give up my Rabblemaster to a PNK activation. I also don't want to take a billion damage from this Ancient Tomb. I don't know if that's going to be possible, though. If I tap Ancient Tomb, that saves me the amount of damage that PNK would do. I don't think I need to Thought-Knot Seer my opponent this turn. And the reason is, if they had a big 4-drop like a Chandra that I cared about, they probably would have just led on it that turn. Alright, the Trinisphere makes my Punishing Fire a little bit worse, but I'm already going to outclock my opponent, I think. So now that my opponent's getting low on cards, it's probably time to play the Thought-Knot Seer while that still gets value. I don't think I'm going to take anything great here. Confirmed. But I think I'm going to pivot into the beatdown next turn and play a hasty Shifting Ceratops. And I'll have my opponent on a 2-turn clock. Okay, do I want to attack with Thought-Knot Seer? And if so, how? I can let my opponent trade their bodies for the Thought-Knot Seer. I can let them trade their bodies for Shifting Ceratops. I can play this more patiently and just play Goblin Rabblemaster and get back Punishing Fire this turn. This is actually pretty interesting. Specifically, I don't want my opponent to like draw a card with Thought-Knot Seer and then have Chandra happen. Like they draw a Chandra and they like kill my Shifting Ceratops. I think I'm going to play inefficiently but safely here. Okay. I don't know if my opponent missed that line or was just like, I need to call this, and if I call this and miss, I'm dead. Alright. So, in this mirror or pseudo mirror, I'm probably going to be looking at these cards. The wilts are pretty medium, but they might be better than something that I'm going to take out of the deck. So for example, the first thing I need to do is take out Chalice of the Voids. Iris Tracker also pretty good, I suppose. Blood Suns are not a great use of my time either. Because while they stabilize my mana, they also stabilize my opponent's City of Traders as well. Let's see if I can pull all of both of those. If I do that, it's Tracker, Tracker, Confluence, Confluence, Spyglass, Double Wilt. Blood Sun better than Wilt, because it's easier to cycle a Blood Sun under an opposing Blood Moon. That probably doesn't matter because my opponent probably boards out Blood Moon. I'm going to keep Wilt, and then we'll bring one Blood Sun back in. And something of that nature is probably fine. This hand has gas, but not the appropriate amount of mana. I'll mulligan this. This hand has the opposite problem. Boy. You have to keep 5 of these. This just a, like, play Blood Sun, pray that everything works out hand. I think going to Thor is a very bad prospect. I do not expect to win this game. Interesting. I'm not complaining here. May end up being a positive for me. I'm not sure. Now I didn't use my Spirit Guide to put the Blood Sun in play to save the City of Traders. If I draw a Punishing Fire here and I just get to kill whatever creature my opponent plays, I'm not actually in bad shape. Don't think I get to just Blood Sun this turn. I need to use this cantrip next turn. Or sorry, I need to use this mana next turn to play this Planeswalker and kill this. Then hopefully stabilize the board some other way. Was an inefficient removal spell here for me. But hopefully, like, I just take 2 this turn, my opponent doesn't draw a land, so I don't take, any more damage, my opponent doesn't get on board more, and then hopefully I draw out of this situation before my opponent draws lands. Hello. I play this and plus this, it's bad specifically against Bone Crusher Giant. But I think I have the biggest chance of getting back in this game by spiking a good card off of Chandra next turn. We have conveniently filtered a bad card off the top of my library as well. How does he know? How does he know? Next turn I can play a Court of Ire, but that's not really going to be good for me. It would be very good if I could cast the Thought-Knot Seer. Oh, this one's mine. Now the Court of Ire is very good next turn, because I have the board stabilized. I'm also getting pretty lucky that my opponent is not drawing land. That is helping a lot here. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Minus on that is going to be quite strong. I'm going to have tokens to think about from my opponent's hasty things. How do I want to play this turn? Like, because I can just Court of Ire and pick off one of their creatures and then play my Planeswalker and start plussing it. Or I can just go Dome. Maybe I just go Dome here. I'm going to hope that I can just aggro this game out. Even if I just treat the Court of Ire as a controlling element to help get the board down, I think that's pretty good. I don't think my opponent can deal with both my Planeswalker and my Court of Ire before I kill them. That's a way that they could. Alright, so that's all coming at me. Alright, how do I want to do this? I have 2 guaranteed damage. The Court of Ire. So this is 4, 8, 9, 10. I do need to block. I can just go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And as long as I keep my Bone Crusher Giant alive, my opponent is deterministically dead, I believe. Let's double check that. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from 2 Chandra emblems. That should be fine. The only thing I'll lose to is a Stomp. Is there any way I beat Stomp? What if I like trade with one of these? And I just have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'd have to try to stabilize the board. No, let's just block here. Let's lose to Stomp, but beat everything else. Yep, alright, my opponent saw the writing on the wall. GG, opponent. For anyone saying these sorts of matches aren't interesting, I hope I just showed off like how much math and like intricacy can actually be involved in these sorts of games. You know, it looked like I was just going to get skunked by an early Blood Moon, but by sort of playing tightly and evaluating choices well, I came back and stole that one. All right, I'll be keeping this hand. This is a hand that could be played out a couple of different ways. It can just be turn 1 Rabble into turn 2 Rabble, or it can be turn 2 Blood Sun into double Rabble. We're going to have to see what our opponent does. If our opponent is a blue deck, I will probably lead on the Blood Sun in the hopes of sort of crippling their early mana development. But if my opponent leads on, say a plains or something like that, I will probably lead on the double Goblin Rabblemaster to try to aggro my opponent out before they really get themselves established. Let me tell you, Goblin Rabblemaster, not good against Stoneforge Mystic, or Thalia, or most kind of crappy white creatures. Okay, so um play Chalice around Daze. I'm gonna play Blood Sun into Daze, and I don't care if I get Daze. But a Blood Sun is a card that is exponentially better if it goes into play on turn 1 or turn 2. And it just gets much weaker after that. And so in the later turns of the game, I view Blood Sun as a thing that cantrips and maybe does something. Whereas in the early game, Blood Sun is a hate piece. And so I'm going to go ahead and deploy this now. All right. Fetch lands are off for my opponent. We'll see how much that matters. Now let's deploy the Chalice and hopefully invalidate a bunch of the cards that they would draw off of the Sylvan Library. Okay, that's fine. I'm guessing we're dealing with some sort of Uro pile here, just based on what I'm seeing thus far. It's often a little bit hard to tell specifics because a lot of these decks are just like a mush of good cards. I do love my opponent drawing cards off a Sylvan Library here. Like, I'm going to be pretty damn good at dealing 10 damage. Yeah, so there's probably like Life from the Loam based shenanigans over there. Green mana would be cool. Not green mana. Luckily, my opponent's mana is not great currently. So Scrubland and Caracas both do not contribute to casting that Uro. So that's very good for me. I may have time to Clothis that thing out of the graveyard. Although, if I'm being honest, I'm really just hoping to play Goblin Rabblemaster and just attack my opponent twice and kill them. I assume my opponent's deck has Life from the Loam since I'm seeing Raven's Crime here. Intuition is also probably pretty likely. So I'm going to be boarding in a pile of relics this matchup. I don't think I'll play Wilt. Do I play this? Yeah, I'll play this. The life loss is relevant. Seems good. Oh wait, why am I even questioning playing this? Like I have Blood Sun. Lol. Yeah, that's fine. I will Punishing Fire that. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm happy enough with that. I wonder if there's a world where I'm supposed to just hardcast Simeon's Spirit Guide this turn. Rather than like Punishing Fire. I can attack in for 1, they go to 9, I play Spirit Guide, I have a larger creature on board that represents more damage over time than the Goblin. I think I'm okay with that. It becomes a little awkward in the face of Raven's Crime, but whatever. So my opponent hitting 2 lands that produce Uro mana is bad for me. My opponent hitting a single Uro is also bad because then they just like play it, bounce it with Karakas. Alright. The green producing land next turn is very bad for me. Sure. Attack with both. I think there's an argument that attacking with the Goblin can be okay. But I need to get every point of damage in right now because this Uro coming back beats me. I just have never hit green mana for Klothys to answer it. My opponent gets to look at least 3 bonus cards every turn for Sylvan Library. Yeah, that's fine. That's very good. All right. If my opponent doesn't get that green land this turn, I might be able to just aggro finish this game, even if they do resolve Uro the following turn. But both of us have gotten a little bit unlucky here in terms of mana development. And this is why I was a little bit worried about getting green-green in a lot of games. Notably, the Chandra Awakened Inferno is not particularly great versus these Uro decks. It used to be... What is this? Oh, just Life from the Loam. Oh, no, Life from the Loam is actually very good. Oh, it's not, though. But it is. But it's not. But it is. So it's not immediately good. I need this. Pay for it like that. 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's not good, though. Blood Sun shuts off Misty from actually getting them the right color. Oh, man, Blood Sun has very quietly maybe won me this game. Okay. So we've identified Uro as a problem card, right? So feel really good about this package. I'll probably play Tireless Tracker as well to grind value. So what don't I want here? I do not want the chalices. That's just not going to be a part of my plan. What's next? Punishing Fire is nice against, like, things like Baleful Strikes. Blood Sun is nice against my opponent's mana base. Generally speaking. I need these cards. The Tireless Trackers are okay. How do I feel about shifting Ceratops versus Tireless Tracker? Like, this is pro blue. It gets through a bunch of my opponent's threats. It can also brick wall an Uro. Is Blood Sun on the draw ambitious? Maybe it's ambitious on the draw and I keep it on the play. If I do that, I can board in the 2 Tireless Trackers. Be pretty happy with that. I think my opponent is going to have enough islands to make the Carpet of Flowers worth it. As we saw that game, though, they do have things like Scrubland and Caracas that aren't. Well, I'm keeping this. Let's see. Is this the best hand ever, or is this hand big stinky poo poo? Turn 1 is fucking hot. I get to go Carpet first main phase, and then either Carpet or Relic second main phase as well. I think I just want the relic in play ASAP. I think I just want to keep my opponent's graveyard to 0 cards all game. Because I already have a turn 2 Chandra with a single Carpet of Flowers. Early Court of Ire also will be just disgusting. My opponent fetches another island. I can also just get real cute. As of right now, I have 4 mana next turn. But if they fetch another island, I have 5, which means that I can Carpet of Flowers. Oh, are you an island? Oh, you're an island. So I can use... What do I want to do this turn? Maybe I'll just Thought Knot this turn. The least immediate damage to my opponent, but it's the most disruptive. And it better paves the way for my other cards. Yeah, if one of my things was going to be forced, that was the one that I wanted to be forced. Because my other 2 things are sources of card advantage. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 damage next turn, which is both my Planeswalker and my Court, which is disgusting. Okay, I guess that's fine against Klothys. It didn't let me tap to pay for this in the way that I wanted to pay for this, which is very inconvenient for me. Because now I have 5 mana, but not in the correct color combination. I guess this saves me some life. Wait, hold on. Guess it doesn't. Opponent has hit me with the lull, which that's how you know your cards are good. My opponent has said my 5-0 destroyed by this deck, And I informed them that it's on camera as well. They say hello. This is pretty disgusting. Might have to snip this one for Twitter. Field of the Dead. Neat. Crack this. Probably just crack this. I'll find another. I'm also just putting my opponent under just so much pressure here. With no cards in graveyard, I don't think my opponent can play Uro and escape before these two cards do my opponent in. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's an okay point to throw in the towel, I think. This opening hand only has 1 mana. That needs to go back. This opening hand has no mana. Needs to go back. This opening hand is fine. An unexciting 5. We're going to hope to be paired against a creature deck. I'm going to junk the Bone Crusher here and leave myself with some degree of endgame inevitability. There's some more endgame inevitability. I'm not just going to dome my opponent with the Punishing Fire here. I want to have that card in hand for when it counts. Okay, we have resolved a Blood Sun, which should make it much harder for my opponent to do something like put an Uro into play. Good. I'm going to play mana inefficiently here and play a Goblin Rabble Master. My opponent has a Force of Negation. They can currently hard cast it in order to counter my Planeswalker, and I'd rather get a 2-for-1 out of my Planeswalker if possible. A lot of basics. All right. Icefang Coatl is something I need to be thinking about. So I don't love Court of Ire. I think I like this more. Filter into red. Hold on. All right. Red. Then click that. Very few plays from my opponents here. I'm not sure how I am supposed to read that. This would be a weird set of lands to have if my opponent was a combo deck. Now my opponent can work towards an Uro. Oh? So I'm playing against a food chain deck, probably. I'm punishing fire that and then play Goblin Rabblemaster. Or could punishing fire that plus this for mana and play Court of Ire. I think I like that better. All right. Plus for mana. And let's do this thing. I am the pretty princess. No, I'm not the pretty princess. Fauna has exiled a Mist Hollow-Griffin. A Court of Ire, please go away. Thank you. So my opponent's deck has a lot of basics, so they were able to find 4 more lands despite not being able to fetch anymore. Alright, how do I want to play this? I can just minus this Chandra, or I can double Punishing Fire, right? What's better? Am I winning this game? I'm probably winning this game by ultimating the Chandra. Alright, let's just return this now. Activated this Planeswalker, and call that a turn. And then hopefully I can just ultimate the Chandra, rattle off a handful of spells, and that's just the game. Okay, how deep does your toolbox go? A Scavenging Ooze. Cool value, because they can eat the Mist Hollow-Griffins in the Squee and just send them to exile. I don't think I get to refuse this emblem. We go like... Yeah. Then let's just control the board. And then once we have the board locked down and we don't have to worry about the Scavenging Ooze like really going out of control, I will just like play a couple of spells and kill them. Okay, so Food Chain. This matchup is a little bit spooky. I don't think I'm going to play my Chalices. I think I want Carpets again. Don't want Relics. I don't want to send stuff back to exile. I think I do want Tireless Trackers. And Welts and Fiery Confluences are things I should be thinking about as well. I do think I still want the Blood Suns, despite the fact that they didn't look the best that game. The awkward thing here is that my opponent is probably an Uro deck, and so I do and don't want the relics. Uro is really hard to beat. Like, real hard. Maybe I have to begrudgingly play relics. I don't know that the Uros are there, but it really makes sense for them to be there. I don't think I like Court of Ire. I think my opponent is going to have a decent number of small disposable creatures that they can poke me with. On the play, I want the Blood Suns. I think I'm going to drop them on the draw. Maybe I should have dropped my Cloth. This is... this hand produces a Planeswalker on turn 2. That's a fine keep. I don't think I'm going to YOLO read of, like, just punishing fire the bird. Just hard. It's kind of tempting, though, given how much land I have. Maybe I should. Slows my Planeswalker down by a turn, but maybe slows them down by multiple turns. Alright. I think if I drew a non-land card, I wouldn't do this. Yeah, we gotta force a negation for that. Deal. Uro? Uro. Alright, so the relics were a good idea. It's force of negation, so I don't get my punishing fire back this turn. think this one needs to happen this turn. This plays into a Force of Negation that the Thought-Knot Seer doesn't, but I really need to fish for an answer to the Uro. And this card will let me look at another card next turn. Alright, that Lightning Bolt is the 5th card in graveyard for the Uro once my opponent fetches, unfortunately. Yeah, life's bad. I'm gonna have a really hard time beating that card now that it is in play. I can maybe trade with it and then exile it, but that is asking a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could play Elvish Spirit Guide and Thought-Knot Seer and hope to trade with it that way. Yeah. I don't love it, but let's do that. All right. Life's bad. If our opponent doesn't find a removal spell in their top 2 cards, it's not the end of the world. I think if they do find a removal spell, though, I am in huge, huge shit. This feels bad. This is also just, like, very, very bad if my opponent drew into a lightning bolt. Oh no. Oh, not dead. The biggest thing I can hit is a 6-drop, so let's play this prior to activating the Chandra. Oh baby. I think this redraw is important enough that I just take it now. This redraw here isn't nearly as good, though. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this one on board. I do feel real smart for swapping the ley lines for relics. I think that was a very good decision. I guess my opponent's seen 3 fetch lands this game. Thankfully, my opponent doesn't have like a 3/3 body in play. Like a Griffin-sized threat right now is just so good. What you got? All right, my opponent thought for a second, and then exiled a Bird of Paradise to produce a Scavenging Ooze. Fine. Okay. Do I want a removal spell on Scavenging Ooze here? At the cost of my Planeswalker? Or do I want to try to high roll? The things that I can high roll are so incredibly strong. Do I crack my Relic? So important for me beating an Uro. Not gonna do that. I'm gonna try to high roll here. I think I have a better chance of winning the game long term if I high roll and hit. It'll land. All right. In that case, I will now crack this. Try to find something to do. All right, there's something to do. Force a will. Okay. That's a little unfortunate. Now I lose my Planeswalker. And my opponent still has the Scavenging Ooze. If they didn't have the Force of Will, though, that would have been quite good for me, because then I get to keep the Planeswalker for another activation. We're in blockers and you want to do something? Do you have, like, a ninja over there? No, okay. Alright. A little bit at the mercy of my top of the deck here. Alright. That's not good for me. My opponent has to think about this, which means that I'm not just immediately dead. That's good. Alright, my opponent has picked up a Squee. Now they do have infinite mana for future turns. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very few outs remaining. I can rip a Chandra, Awakened Inferno, or Fiery Confluence. Fire Confluence boarded in. Fire Confluence is not boarded in. Five total mana to play and crack a clue, and then I do exactly have 6 mana remaining. Oh. Nope. On Chandra, Awakened Inferno. That's not it. Could have Bone Crusher gianted myself to show myself the door, but we've still got another game here. All right, on the play, I do like the Blood Suns again, I think. I have so many cards I want in this deck. Maybe the Goblin Rabblemaster plan is less reliable than I want it to be. Maybe I need to morph a little bit more towards a control deck, like go a Goblin Rabblemaster out, a Fiery Confluence in, and then try to fit another Fiery Confluence in. Yeah, I think I like that. And drop some creature somewhere. The Smasher. 1 mana dork. Just play 3 relics. No, Uro is so important. Drop a Ceratops. Green can be a little bit tricky sometimes. I don't think this hand looks like a winning formula, despite having a good mix of lands and spells. I think I want something a little bit faster. This hand does nothing. Literal nothing. That's unfortunate. I mean, this is the cost of trying to play a 2-color deck with City of Traders and Ancient Tombs. Yikes. Okay, well, it will keep. This goes back. And this goes back. And on turn 3, I play Carpet of Flowers. Accepting that I lose City. Yeah, I don't think I can keep double Ancient Tomb. Alternatively, I just play Carplusion Forest and Carpet of Flowers now and give up turn 2 Thought-Knots here, unless my opponent plays an island. Maybe I need this City of Traders long term in case Carpet doesn't do its thing. This is less objectively powerful in a lot of situations than the other way that I could play this hand. But this will make it easier to cast other expensive cards other than just the first Thought-Knots here. Fuck you. Yes, I will. I will choose red. So good. Okay. Need more gas. I guess one reason to play the Thought-Knots here on turn 2 rather than play out Carpet of Flowers is specifically Uro, because I don't have something like a relic to answer it right now. So since my opponent played Bird, they could have just put an Uro into the graveyard immediately. I think I'm just going to go ahead and Thought-Knot Seer this turn. Gives up 1 clue from Tireless Tracker, but it makes it so the Tireless Tracker is more likely to resolve and or stay alive. Green, green, huh? No, no islands. My opponent is playing surgical extraction versus me. I don't know about that. I guess if I kill their griffins, they can like surgical extract them back out, and it's kind of cute. Ow. Oof. All right. So after the mulligan to 5, I just don't have the resources to keep up with my opponent's double force of will. So told my opponent that I'll concede to a win con for x equals 1 if they have it. All right. I think my opponent is... Okay, my opponent's just going to cast Uro. I'm going to just pause this for the YouTube folks. Okay, my opponent made Uro and Is It Staticaster and untapped their Misthollow Griffin, and then I bricked on my draw. I'm going to go ahead and concede here. I'm not going to beat 9 power plus something that, also makes combat math worse for me. All right, I really like this hand. I'm going to be keeping this one. We have a very aggressive start. We have a turn 2 Rabble Master into turn 3 Thought-Knot Seer into turn 4 Shifting Ceratops, or vice versa, but we probably want the Thought-Knot Seer first. Or we go now. I think I just make the Rabble Master on turn 1. Turn 2 is worse. But if I spike another Soul Land, I get Thought-Knot Seer on 2. That's fine. If we're playing against something like Depths, I want my clock in play ASAP. I do also have just a good number of cards that I can spike next turn to have a playable thing. There's 16, 20 playable cards next turn. 23, 27 if I count the Soul Lands as making Thought-Knot Seer playable. Okay, my opponent thought for a very considerable amount of time before Force of Willing that and pitching a Teferi. Oh, so it looks like we are playing against a Bant Infect deck. In which case, most of the rest of my hand is not super good. I'll want to draw a Punishing Fire. I think the Thought-Knot Seer this turn is important enough that I just do this. This becomes incredibly awkward if my opponent has like a Daze or something of that ilk. Alright, they have Pendelhaven and Windswept Heath. So my opponent and I have pretty comparable clocks, but my opponent will probably be better at finishing off this game than I will. Especially now. So that's 7, and next turn they just have lethal by pumping again. Yep. Alright. What do I like? I have a bunch of cards that are okay. These 9 cards all fall into the category of, like, I could board these in without them being embarrassing. I don't think I Carpet of Flowers. My opponent is at least somewhat likely to have, like, a basic forest and Inkmoths, maybe a Wasteland, Pendelhaven, that sort of stuff. Lord of Ire is a repeated shock for my opponent's creatures. That's interesting. Ceratops has Reach, so it blocks Inkmoth. I can't really cut that. I think I just want as many removal spells as I can gain access to. What if I junk Clothis for Spyglass, which is a removal spell of sorts for Inkmoth Nexus? Get Fiery Confluences in there as sweepers. Still think I want Rabble Masters. Yeah, junk the Reality Smasher for that. I think I begrudgingly keep everything that can kill a creature. Now the question is, do I want Wilt for Inkmoth Nexus and Sylvan Library? I think Wilt and Goblin Rabble Master are similar quality of cards. Possible that Chandra Awaken Inferno is worse than Wilt. I'm going to respect my ability to have sweepers. This is fine. I'm going to keep this. I am actually not going to lead on Ancient Tomb, though. I think I'm going to deny myself the possibility of turn 2 Thought-Knots here in order to... Well... My opponent isn't attacking me. For regular damage, I guess Ancient Tomb is not all that damning. If I do this, it costs me life, but it plays around a Daze on a Punishing Fire. I think I want the speed bump that this offers. Possible I could try to catch that in a Fiery Confluence later, but if things go wrong, Fiery Confluence ends up looking pretty embarrassing. Fairy? I think I just don't want my opponent getting my creatures out of play here. I think my ideal turn is my opponent like double creaturing, and then I get to Fiery Confluence for 1, and then send the rest of the Confluence at their face. I think I'm good with this turn. Alright, that's a force pitching the Brainstorm. So if my opponent finds an Invigorate, I die. Am I dead? I am dead. Invigorate plus Berserk. I mean, that is what it is, right? Okay, so I have a very interesting opening hand here. I have 5 mana that goes towards Reality Smasher. And if I draw any other source, I have access to red, red, green, green, and so forth. But I can't actually make the turn 2 Blood Sun that makes this hand keepable. I think I mulligan this one. Yep. This is just classic red prison shit right here. My opponent has gone down to 5 as well. My opponent mulligans to 5, Chalice on 1 into Thought-Knot Seer is probably an amazing opening sequence. I respect the hustle. Alright, do I just want to kill that this turn rather than play Thought-Knot Seer? My mana's better if I don't play Thought-Knot Seer. And it'll be easier for me to cast like a Court of Ire later. This is a little tricky. I think I'm just going to cast the Thought-Knot Seer and take a Lord. Or a True Name. Alright. I need more red mana. I think if I resolve this Court of Ire, I probably don't lose. Still need more red mana. This is actually quite good for me. This means that I don't lose the City of Traders if I play another land, and it also turns off Mute Vault simultaneously. Nice. The next turn I'll play Chandra, Awakened Inferno, which will be uncounterable. I'll nuke the board of all the creatures. Bob's your uncle from there. I guess technically I should have attacked first. Yeah, that's fine. I still have a very spooky Planeswalker in play. What do I do with this Chalice? I guess I can put it on 2, and then it counters Phantasmal Image, while only shutting off 1 Stomp in my deck. No, that shuts off Punishing Fire. Let's not do that. Maybe when it won't cost me life, I'll put it on some other number. Name Nemesis can still be a little bit spooky, I suppose. Okay, those are just 3/3s, though. Yep, that's a turn. I think this is fine to just plus here. Blood Sun did so much work very quietly there. Alright, my Chalice of the Voids need to come out. Most of the rest of the stuff that's in my deck is fine to good. I'll bring Fiery Confluences in. I think I'll bring Sorcerous Spyglass in, since it hits both Ether Vial and Mutavault. Carpet of Flowers is weird. There's a surprising number of non-island cards in that deck. I think I still want it, because my endgame cards are just so strong. I think I go ahead and do this and, like, trim one Spirit Guide, assuming that a Carpet of Flowers is worth at least 1 mana. I could consider, like, a Tireless Tracker over a Klothys. Klothys is a lot of life gain for once I actually stabilize. Let's try this and see how it feels. This is fine. I think I will just be playing this out like a control hand rather than an aggro hand. Definitely now. Is Blood Sun good? No. The reason is because I don't want my opponent to spike a land and then go cast 2-drop into file in 2-drop. That's very good. I'm going to play a Goblin Rabble Master this turn. The reason is that the thing I'm most scared of currently is my opponent just flooping a True Name Nemesis onto the board. And if my opponent plays a True Name Nemesis, the way that I need to beat it is by killing them. And playing the Goblin Rabble Master early-ish allows me to work towards that line. I think this is just Planeswalker and plus here. This is great if it resolves, and if it doesn't resolve, it's a 2-for-1 for me. Yep. All right. The clock is in play. Now Blood Sun becomes more attractive. Okay. These cards sure don't beat a True Name Nemesis. Awkward that I'm giving my opponent life to return this, but feels like the optimal thing to do. Yes. Okay. I am certainly happy enough with that. My opponent and I have very interesting hands. So now I clock as hard as my opponent does. I get 3 a turn via Clothis plus Chandra. And then once I plus again, I get 4 a turn, which means that I'm winning the metaphorical race, especially if my opponent has to focus on killing this. I also just have 8 points of burn in my hand. This is a very strange game. Note that Cavern of Souls has lost its ability. Oh, all right. My opponent has finally conceded there. That's fair. Okay, overall thoughts on the deck list. Oh, and also, like, I totally apologize. I accidentally left that chat box up for, maybe the last round or two there. Let's get rid of that. My bad. Okay, overall thoughts on the deck list. Court of Ire was really interesting. It's a little bit risky, but the fact that it's a 3-turn clock in the mid to end game on its own while also drawing you cards is pretty sweet. Against small creature decks like Merfolk or Death and Taxes, even if you lose the Monarch, it has a very real ability to control the board. I very much like this in conjunction with another Planeswalker. This would be a card that I'd want to explore more in other decks, but I will say I don't know that you get to like play more than one copy of this because like this is a 5-mana enchantment that doesn't have a super immediate impact on the board. I suppose the biggest question here is like, is playing the green worth it at the end of the day? The Punishing Fires felt pretty good throughout the league, but like, is Shifting Ceratops really better than more Reality Smashers? Is Clothis better than some other option that represents damage over time? Clothis is a game one way to answer Uro, which I do think is important. As far as that sideboard goes, I really felt like I was rewarded for my choice to play Relic of Progenitus over Leyline of the Void. That's something that I'd want to run back. And like these green sideboard cards, especially Carpet of Flowers, are pretty good. And we did do some really disgusting things with Carpet. Like Carpet allowing like these cards here to go and really do their thing very consistently versus a deck like Delver is certainly huge. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed that. If you did, please consider clicking the like button before you go. Have a great rest of the day, and if you want to try this out for yourself, remember the deck list is always available in the video description, as is the donation information. See ya!